Tracie, super excited to have you on Mastering CS Candid Leader Insights. Thanks for joining us. I saw that you are also the brain behind Flourish Yoga and Wellness. That's really cool. I'm wondering, juggling that with your role as a customer success manager must be quite an experience. How do you think this unique combination has influenced your approach to customer success?
Yeah, so I've been teaching yoga for, I think, 13 years now. And I've always been somebody who is really just interested in humans and connecting with people. And having that opportunity to become a yoga teacher and connect with people in that way has been really incredible. And also just so affirming of how important it is to take time to connect on a human level. And I think it's also made me a much better manager because one of the things I like about being a manager, which is also what I like about being in customer success, is watching people evolve and grow and change. And those kind of three things all go together, right? So being able to see people in the yoga studio evolving emotionally and physically, like in their practice with themselves. And then also we see that with our customers. We'll work with our customers in such intimate ways sometimes to get them to understand not only what their goals are, but sometimes they don't really understand where their challenges lie. And so being able to help not only discern, but like verbalize really what their needs are in a supportive way. And then also taking that into management, being able to connect with my team and doing it in a way that feels really authentic to who they are and what their needs are. So it's a challenge. I have 2 young children and a business and, a full-time job, but it helps me to be really organized and stay focused. And I think that all those things together fill different needs that I have as a human myself and make me feel, filled up from those experiences.
Speaking about beginnings, I want to ask you, what's your playbook for the first 30 days in a new customer success team? What's your go-to strategy for quickly understanding customer needs and setting the stage for a long-term success?
Yeah, so I think the first thing when you join any organization is to really understand the goals of the organization. So really discern like what the KPIs are. What are you responsible for? What are the things that you need to focus on? And then how does that connect with your role with the customer? So understanding where those benchmarks are so that you can be continuously evaluating whether you're performing at the level that you need to. And then in addition to obviously knowing your product well, I think it's more important to understand the customer well. And you only will learn that by diving into those opportunities to meet with customers, listening to other recorded calls, reading any information that you may have about your customers. Sometimes things are very industry specific. My first role in success was in supply chain and logistics, which I knew nothing about. And I spent a lot of time just learning what that meant, all the different parts of what a supply chain was and who my customers were, who were they serving, what were their goals. And so I would always say to people too, like, don't be afraid to ask lots of questions. That's the only way that you will learn. And people want to talk about themselves. They want to talk about what they're doing and what they're passionate about. And so be open, to ask those questions. So as you spend those first 30 days at a new role, in addition to learning like what the company expects of you, learning more about your customer and what do they expect from you? Why are they using your product? What problem are you solving? And how are you doing that well? And then also knowing like, where are the challenges? Where are your customers feeling friction? And keeping that in mind as you learn more about the product, that will help you become that bridge between CS and product to be able to inform with customer feedback different ways that the company can improve over time. And I always tell people too, like, it's not wrong to have suggestions in your first 30 days. Context is important and it's important to understand things, but you are a fresh set of eyes. You don't have any biases. So you might see something and think, why are we doing it this way? It's okay to ask that question. And you may have suggestions in those first 30 days and it's okay to make them.
You mentioned questions, and I often find it hard to ask the right questions. Do you have a set of questions that you usually ask when you first interact with a customer? Questions that help you dig deeper and find out more and understand the whole context.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question because I think that we can sometimes get caught up in like our list, right? And not deviate from that. And I think it's important to be really flexible and to practice active listening when you're meeting with customers so that you can pick up on those little nuances that you might miss if you're just focused on your list, right? So you want to find out who they are, what are they doing? Like, what is their goal in not just their role, but as their company? What is their company goal? What are they trying to accomplish? Who are they serving? What is their customer or their constituent? Who are they? And how are they helping them? And then you want to learn a lot about the team. Who's on the team? Who's going to be using your product? What are their goals? Why are they using your product? How are they doing things now? What drove them to make this change? And I think that the follow up, whenever you ask kind of an open ended question like that, is to say things like, tell me more about this. If you can read the body language, you'll see where there's points of friction or where there's points of passion. And they want to talk more about that. And so it's totally appropriate to say, I'd like to hear a little bit more about this, or I'd like to dig in a little bit more here, and have them talk more about that and really listen to those things. I also think that this is a great place where AI can be really useful. I find it difficult to take notes and listen at the same time. What's been amazing about all the different products that are available right now is that they will record for you and take notes for you so that you can be really present in that moment and go back and look at things a little bit better and say, the other thing that I found too is that sometimes in the AI summaries, points will come up that I missed, that I realized I didn't even notice that in the conversation. And so that's also been really helpful. It's a nice way to use that technology. But I think that you always should have a follow-up question from your initial question to get them to continue talking about why or how or what, because that's where you really learn from the customer, is to kind of take that next step and say, I'd like to hear more about this. And I think that's where you find the really important knowledge in those moments.
You mentioned AI, and I had it on my list to ask you about this because I think it was a topic well debated, not only in the CS industry. So I didn't know on which part are you, but as you mentioned one of the use cases that you are using it. Any other? What are your AI tools, or how do you use it? Because everyone is afraid in this moment that basically AI will replace our jobs. What's your uh,
Yeah.
what's your take on this?
I don't think that it can replace a human interaction. I think that that's something that, like, that's a misplaced fear. And I think that, all of us as users, you can tell when you're talking to a person and when you're talking to a computer. And I think especially when you're in those moments of like friction or pain points or frustration, you don't want to talk to a computer. And I think that if people kind of take a step back and realize the interactions that they're having, how they're able to recognize that really quickly, they would realize that I don't think AI is ever going to take the place of us. I just think that that's not, it doesn't serve the customer in the way that we can. The few of the tools that I use is I do use ChatGPT. I often will use it to like outline documents that I'm writing. I'll have it check my emails sometimes. Sometimes I have trouble with being concise. And so I will put information into ChatGPT, ask it to summarize it for me, give me the main points. I've also taken conversations that I've had like via Slack or even meetings and taken snippets of it and put it into ChatGPT and asked for the main points. I also use Update AI and we use Gong as a company. Both of those tools are super helpful in taking notes. I find Update AI to be the best in terms of the notes and giving me next steps. I love the summary emails that they send, and it's very clear like what I need to do next, which is really helpful. And then I've also used for the studio itself, and then for work even, I have used Canva has like a magic write feature where it will help you with document writing. I've used it. I don't do any social media at my job now, but I've used it for like social media marketing. Give me 10 social media posts about this topic. And everything that you get from when AI is generating, I would say like that's just your starting point. It's important for you to go in, revise it, make sure that you have your own personal touch. I will say that I have seen AI being used a ton in hiring processes, and it is frustrating. Like, and I didn't realize it was happening right away. We got the last role that I hired for, we had over 1,200 applicants for this role. And a human being like actually looked, myself and our recruiter looked through all the applications. And I would see somebody, I thought, oh, this is great, you know? And then all of a sudden I realized one day as I was going through the responses, because we have like questions and lever that people answer when they submit, I realized, oh, I feel like I've read this before. And I started going back through and I found many people who clearly had been using the same ChatGPT type product. And it was like verbatim. And I thought, I appreciate that applying for jobs sucks and it's very tedious and time consuming, but you should be. I don't fault anyone for using it to come up with ideas, but you should take the time to revise it so that it is kind of authentically who you are, right? And I decided, because we just had so many people, that I wasn't going to interview any of those folks just because it wasn't authentic to who they were, right? Like I was trying to find out who they were as a person, not what the computer said about them or about our company. So it was just really interesting. I can't imagine what it's like to be in like a high school teacher or a college professor right now. Because I could see how that would be really useful when you're in college. But yeah, I think that technology always, in my mind, the creation of it is to make our lives better, right? And to improve where we're at. And I think that AI has the potential to do that in lots of ways to support you. I know that people use it even for personal growth. Like they'll talk to ChatGPT and ask for questions about like how to make their schedules better or help me make a sleep schedule or things like that. And so I think it's something that you absolutely should be cautious of and thoughtful about how you're using it, but I don't think that we have to be afraid of it necessarily.
You mentioned the AI being used in recruitment process, and you mentioned that you basically disregarded the ones that were not authentic. When you are recruiting, what are the skills that you are searching for? What are the things that you do not compromise? What
Mm-hmm.
makes a great CSM for you?
Yeah, I think that I've never been, I mean, I've taught at a collegiate level, but I've never been like a teacher. I didn't get trained for that. And I feel like, teachers, salespeople, they have like their voices. You have your teacher voice, you have your sales voice. CSM is the same way. You have your CS voice. I know that like if my husband walks into the house, he can tell if I'm talking to my team or if I'm talking to a customer. You have a different way, of carrying yourself. And I think that that's the thing that you're growing over time or when you're early in your journey, right? Like who you are, what's your message, how do you connect to people? And so for me, regardless of the sector I'm in right now, I work mostly with nonprofits. And so they're very emotionally attached to the work that they do. They're very connected to the causes that they're working for, and they want that connection with us. Even when I worked in supply chain and logistics, the people that I worked with cared deeply about the work that they were doing. And so I think that it's important to demonstrate when you're applying for jobs, how do you connect to people? What's important to you? Like I do like to learn, about the person that I'm interviewing and what are the things that are important to them? How do they connect as a human being? And I think that when you're answering questions, it's for like resumes or cover letters, things like that. I think it is helpful to show the ability to connect on a human level. I also look for, especially if you're coming into a startup role, I think that ownership is really important. Being able to identify where things can be improved, make those suggestions and run with it and own that whole process, show that you're able to identify areas to improve and that you're willing to take risks and experiment. So I think for me, like probably the top three things that I look for when I'm hiring somebody, someone who has confidence and really kind of knows who they are, like what they're bringing to the world. Someone who is comfortable connecting on a human level, and someone who also is comfortable with ownership and experimentation. So that I know that they're going to always be trying new things, and that will lead to them being able to, really serve the customer well.
And what do you think it makes the difference between a great CSM and a good one?
That's a hard question. I think a great CSM is someone who is able to connect deeply with their customer, understand their needs, and demonstrate the value of the product to them. Show them why this is important to you. I might be alone in this, but I don't really care what your product does. If your customer doesn't want to use it every day, then they're not connected to it. And so you need to show them how this is something that they need every day to be able to do their job well, and or whatever it is that they want to accomplish, right? And so I think a great CSM is able to really understand the use case and demonstrate how that product is able to accomplish those goals for them in a way that makes them realize they can't live without this thing. And I think that, and then also a great CSM is somebody who is forward looking to help, themselves grow and also help their company grow in the ways that the customer needs so that they can support, sustainability within that customer base.
Speaking about customers, it's not always easy to speak with them. And dealing with customer complaints can be like navigating a tricky maze. How do you tackle those tough conversations and steer them towards positive outcomes?
Yeah, so I've had some really difficult customers. I also worked, before I moved into SaaS, I worked in the affordable housing space for about 14 years. And so I worked in government, which is interesting, and lots of interesting people. I think the thing that I learned the most from that experience is that people want to be heard. And so whenever you're dealing with somebody who is upset or frustrated, the most important thing initially to build rapport is to give them space to talk about what they're feeling. You don't have to agree with them. It's not a moment for you to affirm everything. It's a moment to let them express how they're feeling and then try to find a path forward and acknowledge. Even if you don't agree with them, you can acknowledge how they're feeling. I understand why you may feel frustrated. I can see your point of view. I understand that you're upset. I can see why you're upset. Being able to just affirm that goes a huge distance in terms of building that relationship. I think it's also really important, and I teach this to my team. There is a place where you have to set appropriate boundaries. There are some people who have come very far in life with very bad behavior, and it's okay to not participate in that and to say, this is what I can do for you, and that's the limit of what I'm able to do for you. And you're not always going to find a solution for them. There may be times when you're able to do what you're able to do, and that's it. And so I think that it's really important. I've seen lots of situations where people will allow abusive behavior from customers, and that's not acceptable. And so I think that you can be kind, but you can also be very firm and clear with what you're capable of doing. So you acknowledge their feelings, you give them space to express themselves, you affirm how they're feeling, and then you start to work on solutions. This is what I'm able to do for you. These are the outcomes that we can work towards together. And I think the biggest thing in all of this, and I've worked with several CSMs who really struggle in this area, this is not about you. Even if you made a mistake, this is not about you. This is about them, and you cannot take it personally, because if you internalize how they're feeling, you will then become defensive. You will become emotional. They're coming to you because they need help and they want a solution. You won't be able to find that if you're also emotional. You have to be really neutral and calm and provide that steady space for them where they feel safe to express themselves and they can trust you moving forward that you're going to find a good solution. And I think that's where setting those clear boundaries and being supportive builds trust so that they feel comfortable moving forward with whatever that solution is that you propose. I think that's where I love difficult customers. They're my favorite. I enjoy, it's a challenge for me. I enjoy working with them and trying to find that common ground and moving forward. It's so satisfying at the end of a call for someone to say, I didn't expect for this to happen, or I didn't think that you'd be able to help me, or I'm really sorry I acted the way I did at the beginning of the call. I think that there's a place where you have an opportunity to learn, you have an opportunity to work on your relationship building skills and build that trust to move forward together. And I think that's why I enjoy those situations, because they're a really great learning experience, but they're also so rewarding at the end when you have that solution together.
Everything that you mentioned feels like parenting, to be honest. I was basically listening to what you said, and it's basically what I do with my daughter. So basically, okay, listen to her, acknowledge how she feels. It's not about me. It's about her. Setting boundaries again. So
Mhm.
honestly, it feels more like parenting, and the other way around. And remaining on those, I would say difficult moments, difficult clients. I wanna ask you: do you think it's possible to turn things around in an offboarding interview and save a customer from leaving?
I think so. I think it's always kind of depends on like kind of what they're coming with, and sometimes it's just not a good fit. I mean, I'm sure you've been in that situation where sales did a great job selling to the wrong person and they come to the call and you're like, why did they buy this software? I have no idea. Like we can't do anything that they think we can do. In those moments, I think it's just important to acknowledge, this is what we can do and kind of move forward. But I have had calls where people have gotten on and been not so happy and wanted to cancel. And I think that in those moments, again, you have to, excuse me, stay calm and not take it personally. They don't dislike you. They feel upset or disappointed because they thought they were getting something that they didn't get. And so I think in those moments, it's really important again to acknowledge what your goals are and then focus on the stuff that you can do. Say, okay, here's where we can help you. These are the things that you mentioned that you want to do. Here's how you do all of those things. Here's how we can help you with that, support that, and take it a step further. And then in the areas that that you can't help them, being honest about that and saying, this is a really great use case. I think other customers, if this is true, of course, I think other customers may benefit from a feature like this. I would love to speak more to you about this use case so that I can go back and inform our product team about this and see if there's any way that we can make some changes to the software. I never promise anything, but I let them know that we are interested in hearing what they have to say because I think that that also goes a long way. And I think that's where you build longer term customer relationships is by giving them a platform to talk about their needs and taking those seriously and caring about them. And so I think that if you focus on the good, focus on what you can do, acknowledge the areas where you may be falling short, and come up with some sort of solution or plan for accomplishing some of those things, or maybe even saying, like, I'd love for you to talk to our products team about this and let them have some time with them. I think that people do really care about being treated with caring and respect. And I do think it makes a difference. I've seen it myself, our software, some of our competitors, we may be a little bit more expensive, but we hear all the time that the reason people choose us is because of our customer relationships and that they know that our team cares about them and wants them to be successful. And so I think, in our world today, we focus so much on the capitalistic view of things. And consumers are very fickle. And so I think that there's always going to be something shiny and flashy and cheaper than you are. But what those shiny, flashy, cheaper things can't provide are the intangibles that you can. And I think that's where you have to really set yourself apart and focus on those. Because at the end of the day, people do want to feel important and cared about, and they want to feel like somebody understands them. And if you can do that, then I think that you're able to really keep a customer for a long time.
You mentioned about sales and customer success, and about the situation in which sales is not selling necessarily to your ICP, and this
Yeah.
gives a lot of struggle on the CS plate. I wanna ask you, how do you align the two teams, the sales and customer success, in your playbook? And what are some tactics you found effective in fostering this relationship?
Yeah, I think the first thing, and exactly what you say in terms of a relationship, the companies that I've worked at that have had the most successful handoffs have been companies where we took the time for the CS team and the sales team to actually get to know each other. It's a lot easier to not care about the consequences of things when you are not understanding who is being affected by those. So I also think that there can be a lot of negativity between like CS and sales sometimes because the CS team might not know the salespeople that well. And so they'll get frustrated and, oh gosh, that salesperson, they always do this. It's things like that, right? If they actually get to know them and they have a better personal relationship with them, that stuff doesn't happen as much. And there isn't this tension between sales and CS. And so I think doing team building exercises, even virtually, can be really helpful. Getting to know each other, doing some short 15-minute calls, like using like a service like Donut, for example, where people have time to talk about stuff that's not related at all to work and find that common ground is really important. The next thing that I always tell my CSMs too is that it's our job to refine our ICP over and over again so that it's very clear about who is being successful with our software. What are the characteristics of the customers who are being successful, who are being most successful, and then communicating that in a way to the sales team where it makes it very easy for them to understand when they're talking to somebody initially if they fit into that category or not. You're always going to get somebody who doesn't fit, right? It's just going to happen. I think, it's important for the CS to understand that the sales team has a quota that they have to make usually. And at the end of the month, there's lots of things that slip through so that they can meet their numbers. But it is our job to be responsible for, educating the sales team and giving them the things that they need to be successful. And I think that's kind of where things break down and fall short, is that there's this expectation that the sales team should, and this, I see this at all organizations that I've worked at, there's this expectation that the sales team should have an intimate, deep understanding of our customer, and they have no opportunity to do that. I say this all the time, and it's kind of like a crude comparison, but like sales is like a one night stand and CS is like a marriage, like you take time developing this relationship and nurturing the relationship and really getting to know them because it's going to be a long-term thing, right? And so there is benefits in investing in that. In sales, it's very transactional. It's like you're trying to get to know them as quickly as possible. You have a ton of people you have to talk to in a day. And you have to very quickly discern with just a few questions if you think they fit this mold, right? And it all depends on what the person's saying and what the salesperson is hearing. And those two things aren't always the same thing. And so I think that there needs to be a little bit more grace from the CS side in understanding kind of how that relationship works with sales, and that it is sometimes very quick and they don't have time to get to know the person as well. And so anything that you can do to support their discovery process better, you're going to get better clients at the end of the day. And so I think that's where CS and sales have the most opportunity for collaboration, is having CS be very vocal and assisting with tools, with checklists, with questions, with PDFs to give the sales team to help them be more successful in determining whether a customer's a good fit or not.
How do you evaluate the impact you've made in customer success? And what are your key metrics that tell you are heading in the right direction?
Yeah, so that's always a good question. I feel like they're changing. And I also think too that people have their favorite, right, that they believe in. So I think that for me, you have to take several things together to find your whole picture. And I think health scores obviously are important, but if you're using health scores, you have to have a way to like weight them. I think most softwares allow you, if you're using a software, we don't currently have a software, but if you are using a software, you generally can weight them so that you know what you're looking for. I think it's important to constantly be revisiting your health scores and seeing if they're applicable or not. Any software over time is going to evolve. And so like the first customer that you worked with is not going to be the same as your most recent one. So it's important to be open to evolution of those metrics and how you are measuring success of your customers. For myself, we always have the revenue. So we always look at our revenue, our recurring revenue, churn, making sure that that's healthy. NPS is a great indicator sometimes too of how people like your software. It doesn't always mean that it's working for them. It doesn't always mean that they're going to stay. I've seen people who are 10s who say, I have to leave. So I don't know that it's an indicator of retention all the time, but I always try to focus on direct impact with the customer. So adoption metrics or being able to show general impact over time. And that comes more closely into aligning with your data team and your engineering team to be able to actually collect information from your customer. It does usually, depending on your type of software, it does sometimes require them to self-report things, which can make things a little bit hairy. But, at the end of the day, you need to be able to show them very clearly what they've accomplished and how they used your software to do that. And I think that's where adoption metrics come into play, and are really helpful in the retention gain, is being able to show that direct impact. You have saved this much money. You have saved this much time. You have gotten this much money, whatever it is that your thing is, being able to really show the customer very clearly, not just in words, but also in pictures, being able to show graphs or numbers, that really demonstrate the value that they've been able to get over the last year. So I think in terms of measuring a team, I have seen KPIs anywhere from like, how many calls have you made this quarter, to, your expansion dollars, or your certain levels of retention. But I think if you really want to talk about customer success and customer health, you need to develop a strategy to measure what the customer is doing against what their goals are. That can be very challenging when you have low ACV, because you don't usually have the time or the manpower to do that. And so that's where, tooling comes into play, to be able to kind of say, well, we can track X, Y, and Z in the software. That demonstrates that they're using it. It demonstrates that they're getting value from it, and then how to communicate that to the customer. I hope that answered the question.
For sure. For sure it did. I wanna do a follow-up because you mentioned about the CS KPIs. I'm curious, how is your manager reviewing your performance? What are your individual KPIs? What do you report on a month by month basis?
So, my manager looks at, even though I'm in the lead position and I manage the team support and success, I still also have a book of business. So I have the highest paying customers at our company. So we obviously look at those retention numbers, and then the performance of my team as well. So we are tracking, right now, we're specifically looking at measuring the impact of customer success on our customer base. And part of that is to help build capacity at our organization. So we track how many people we're meeting with and the success of those types of interactions, which means we gather data, user data before the meetings, and then user data after the meetings to see what their impact was there. I'm also measured on our one-to-many events, because we're doing a lot of scale work. And so being able to help the team revise those and make them more impactful. And again, we measure data at the beginning and then after to see those impacts. And then in terms of like the support side, the direct measurements there that I'm looking for is reducing, how long it takes for us to help people and making sure that they're happy, those interactions. So I am directly measured on the team metrics and then my own individual ones. I also have a component, though, that I think is really important that we don't always talk about, is my team's satisfaction. I actually ask them every week to give me, it's like their weekly retro, where they answer a few questions. And one of those questions is, how can Tracie support me better, as my manager? And I want to know that, every week. I want to know, like, what are things that I can do better? How can I make things work better for you? So I think, like, from a team management standpoint, my KPIs are focused around the team performance, my own book of business performance. And then I also measure myself against the needs of my team, and am I able to fulfill those? So
what's your performance review process for your team? How do you make sure that they move the needle in the right direction?
Yeah, so we do, at a company level, we have performance reviews twice a year. We provide 360 reviews, so there's peer reviews that go into that. And then the team, anybody who reports to someone else, does a manager review, obviously. And then I think we actually just started doing our review cycle now, so we're in the middle of that. I look back at the goals that they've set. So we always have kind of your key metrics, which would be like your GR. At our company, we do GRR right now. So their recurring revenue, what are they doing kind of at that level? How are their expansions? What's their rate of churn across their customer base, their book of business? And then we also look at specific professional development areas. And we come up with 2 of those usually, and give them tips on what they could do better. Where is this coming from? And for us, I think that our company is really aligned in this idea of having a growth mindset. And so when people are filling out the peer reviews, they're very honest. I wouldn't say that they're unkind, but they're very clear and like, here's where you could do a little bit better, or here's where I feel like you might have fallen short. And so I'm able to take kind of the peer reviews and match that with where I think the person can grow and give some really concrete, specific examples of things that they could do differently. And then we kind of measure it in 2 ways, or we present it in 2 ways. Here's what we hope you can do. Here's some concrete suggestions. Here's what it would look like if you were just really killing it. And that gives them kind of a barometer of like, where do they want to go? How much do they want to invest? And then after our review cycle is done, we do like a development plan for the next 6 months where we take those development areas and the individual comes up with some ways that they want to work towards accomplishing those. And then we meet monthly to continue talking about that. I am really big on trying to give as many external resources too as possible. So I'm always sharing like blogs and books and like LinkedIn posts that, kind of will help them. I think the other thing that's really important as a manager to remember is that this person probably isn't going to be with your company forever. And they want to grow, independently from their role here. They want to learn and grow. And so I always ask my team, like, what are ways that you want to grow? Or what are things that you're interested in? And how can we create opportunities for you to learn that? So that in your next role, whether it's here or somewhere else, you have this experience to move forward with. And I think that it's like, I don't know, I sometimes feel like it's a weird conversation or there's some kind of like tension around it, but it's okay to acknowledge like I'm not going to be at this company forever and I want to get as much out of this opportunity as I can. So here's the things that I'd like to do, and this is what my plans are for my professional development. How can you help me and support me in that? And I think that it's okay to have those conversations. And so I always try to ask them like, where do you want to grow? Here's where I think that you could grow. Is that relatable? Do you feel like that's in your path too? I have someone right now who expressed in their performance review that they wanted to do some more like UX UI stuff. And so I said, okay, I'm going to talk to that part of our company and see if there's any way for you to get involved with anything there. It isn't directly part of their job description right now, but it's definitely, there's a crossover and they could absolutely get involved with that and learn more. And it'll give them an opportunity to see, is this something that they really like? Like, do they really want to do this moving forward? So I think that for me, like, oftentimes I've had performance reviews where it was kind of like you do your review and then it's done, right? And then nothing happens after that. And then you wait for your next one to come. What I like to do is have an ongoing dialogue. So every month we're coming back to that performance review. We're talking about those areas. I try to find examples of where I think they've grown or where I think they've accomplished the thing. And then other examples of maybe, here's what I was talking about. Do you see in this example where you could have done this differently or that differently to help them grow?
As we evolve in our roles, there's always the risk of overlooking something. What's one thing that even experienced CSMs might sometimes miss or not give enough attention to?
I think that in terms of like professional and self-development, it's really important to have self-awareness and to be able to identify your strengths and your weaknesses and kind of lean into both of those so that you know where you have to grow. I think that one thing that we might not take advantage of enough is asking our peers and even other people cross-functionally at the company, where could I have done better here? Did this meet your expectations? Do you have any suggestions, of how I could have done X better? And I think that we're afraid so many times to get negative feedback, right? If you're asking the right people and they care about you, the feedback is going to be beneficial so that you can grow. And I think that's where oftentimes in terms of our own professional development that we miss things, that we have opportunities to learn from the people around us and we don't ask those questions and we don't ask, how is it going? In terms of like building relationships with customers, I think that what we overlook is the importance of that connection. And we take for granted the customers that we think are solid. And so we feel like we don't invest in them as much, right? We don't need to invest in them as much because they love us. They're never going to leave. But I think that you have to treat all the customers the same. So I always think to myself, like, nothing is ever a sure thing. And if I was trying to save somebody, like all the effort that I was putting into trying to save somebody, I should also be giving that effort to the folks that I already have that I know want to stay with us, so that my efforts are consistent among my customer base. And I think that's where you see the biggest results in terms of expansion and retention with your customers.
Thinking about learnings and development and growing in the current role, I do think that the most important learning lessons, or at least in my case, were coming from mistakes. So I want to ask you if you have an example of a mistake that you've made in your CS role that actually turned into a valuable learning experience.
Oh gosh, we don't have enough time for all. Well, the
Please
first
to
thing I would
share
say
at least
is,
some.
the first thing that I always tell my team is that, I think language is really important, and there's no such thing as a mistake. There is only learning opportunities. And you can absolutely take your moment to be like, oh gosh, I can't believe I did that. But focus on what are you learning from that and how do you move forward. I think, let me think of a really good one for a customer where I screwed up something. I can't think of something like that I did terribly wrong, but I definitely have had instances where I may not have prepared like for my meeting well enough, and gotten on a call and either like forgot the name of the person I was talking to, or didn't realize what their company did. That's an embarrassing thing where I wasn't prepared for a meeting. And usually like you can do stuff on the side and get yourself reoriented. But in those moments, I think what was a reminder to me was it's really important to be gentle with yourself. Maybe I got on a call and I wasn't fully prepared for it. Obviously, it's a reminder for me to be more prepared the next time, to have notes ready. But I think too that you're a human being, and admitting that you're a human being, admitting that you made a mistake is a huge step forward when you do something wrong for a customer. And I think that's where not only learn, but you start to build a reputation with them about how much you care about them, right? It makes a huge difference when you admit that you made a mistake, and then you can move forward from it.
As we are closing this discussion, I'm curious of one thing. What's your big prediction for customer success in 2024? Where should the up-and-comers in CS be looking?
Oh gosh. I think that if you want to set yourself apart from there's lots of people out there looking for jobs. If you want to set yourself apart from other applicants, you need to be able to be a good storyteller and utilize data to tell a story. So come to your interviews prepared with accomplishments that have able to demonstrate how we are a revenue driver and a stabilizing factor at companies at this point. I think that's where customer success will be going. I think a lot of the things that you're seeing right now with some, and I haven't experienced this myself, luckily, but I've been hearing a lot about customer success kind of becoming like SDRs or salespeople. And I think that will end as things kind of stabilize over the next 2 quarters. But I think at the end of the day, one thing that customer success really has to focus in on and become really adept at is being able to use data to show their impact, not just with the customer, but at the company level. How are you contributing to the long-term success of the company? Why is customer success beneficial for our company? In a lot of ways, I think that because so much of what we do is very touchy-feely, we're afraid of using data, we're afraid of quantifying things, but CS cannot be a cost center. It has to give back, in terms of revenue to the company. And so I think that where we're headed is a realignment of expectations of what CS actually does and what they provide for stability at a company level. Because I think that's why so many of them are being pushed into sales roles, right? Because sales is extremely quantifiable. It's super easy to be able to say, you talk to this many people, you close that many people, that's how successful you are, right? There's a grayer area. And because retention is such a long game and such a lagging indicator all the time, there is this kind of concern, I think, of like, how can I show my impact if it takes a year for me to show what I've done, right? And so I think that that's where we have to focus on the data of like usage behavior, actual experience, metrics, and what you're bringing to the table for the customer to focus on adoption and how they're actually utilizing the software. So if you're able to quantify the wins the customer has and you can quantify how you drove those, then you become a bigger story to talk about. And I think that's where we're headed right now, is kind of this emphasis on being able to quantify that in a quicker way than we do now.
Tracie, thank you very much for your time, for your inputs, and for your insights. It was a really pleasure talking to you today.
Yeah.